David and his wife Maria were excited when they bought their new house in a quiet neighborhood. It was a beautiful place with green lawns, tall trees, and friendly faces. After many years of renting small apartments, this house felt like a dream come true. David worked as an engineer, and Maria had a calm and observant nature that made her good at handling people. Together, they wanted a peaceful life. For the first few weeks, everything was perfect. The neighbors smiled, the air smelled fresh, and the mornings were peaceful. David enjoyed watering the plants every day, and Maria loved decorating the rooms with small paintings and fresh flowers. They believed this neighborhood would finally give them the peace they were looking for. But things started to change slowly. One afternoon, David found a white envelope on their doorstep. It was from the Homeowners Association, known as the HOA. The letter was polite, asking them to trim their bushes a little shorter. David didn't think much about it. He trimmed the bushes that same evening. A few days later, another letter came. This one asked them to paint their mailbox black instead of brown. David laughed and told Maria it was a small thing, so they painted it. But soon the letters became more frequent and demanding. One message said that the color of their front door did not match community standards. Another said their garden decorations were not allowed. Maria read the letters carefully. Something about them felt too personal. It was as if someone was watching their house closely every day. David decided to visit the HOA office to discuss the problem. When he arrived, he met a woman named Mrs. Green who spoke with a cold tone. She told David that all homeowners must follow the rules or face penalties. David tried to explain that he was following all written guidelines, but Mrs. Green simply said, "We decide what's acceptable." Her smile felt forced and her eyes held no warmth. David left the office feeling uncomfortable. The next few days were tense. Maria noticed a few people from the neighborhood slowing down their cars in front of their home, looking at it closely. One man even took pictures. When she waved, he quickly drove away. Then one evening, something strange happened. Just after dinner, there was a loud knock on the door. David stood up, surprised. It was already dark outside, and they were not expecting anyone. He looked through the small glass window and saw two men wearing police uniforms standing outside. "Are you expecting someone?" Maria asked softly. "No," David said, frowning. He opened the door halfway. The taller man stepped forward and said, "Good evening, sir. We received a complaint from the HOA. They said there's a violation on your property and we need to take a look." David was puzzled. "A violation? What kind?" "It's a long list," the second man said. "We just need to come inside and check a few things." Maria walked closer, quietly observing them. Something didn't look right. Their uniforms looked slightly different from what she remembered local police wearing. Their badges looked printed, and one man's shoes were not the kind police officers usually wore. David stayed calm and said, "Before you come in, may I please see your IDs properly?" The taller man quickly flashed a card but did not let David read it carefully. "You can trust us," he said with a smile that did not feel genuine. Maria felt her stomach tighten. She whispered, "David, they are not real officers." David nodded slightly. He straightened his back and said firmly, "If there is a real issue, please call your station and come back with proper papers. I will not allow anyone inside without clear proof." The two men exchanged glances. Then one said, "We'll be back soon." They turned around and walked away quickly. Maria closed the door and locked it. Her heart was calm, but her mind was sharp. "They were pretending," she said quietly. "And I think the HOA sent them." David looked at her, surprised. "Why would they do that?" "I don't know yet," she replied. "But they want us gone, and they are ready to scare us." David felt a mix of anger and confusion, but Maria stayed composed. She had seen people use tricks before, but this one was bold. What the HOA didn't know was that Maria had a background most people didn't. She had once worked closely with federal officers and still had her identification card stored safely in her drawer. She looked at David with calm eyes. "If they try again, we'll handle it the right way," she said. David trusted her completely. But deep down, he wondered what kind of neighborhood they had really moved into. The next morning, David woke up early and looked out the window. The two men who claimed to be police officers were gone, but something felt different. Across the street, a man in a blue shirt was standing beside a car pretending to check his phone. Every few minutes, his eyes turned toward David's house. Maria joined him by the window and noticed the same thing. "He's watching us," she said quietly. David sighed, trying to stay calm. "Maybe he's just waiting for someone," he replied, though deep down he didn't believe it. They had moved into this neighborhood for peace, not for strange visitors and fake police. David made coffee and sat at the table with Maria. They talked about what happened the previous night. Maria told him that real police would never act the way those men did. She explained that they would always show a clear ID, speak respectfully, and have a reason backed by a report. David nodded. "Then the HOA is trying to scare us," he said. "But why?" Maria looked thoughtful. "Maybe they want this house for someone else. Or maybe they don't like us questioning their rules." Later that afternoon, David received another letter from the HOA. This one was more direct. It said that he had refused inspection, and that the HOA would be taking further steps. There was no explanation about what those steps were. The message ended with a warning. "Compliance is mandatory for all residents." Maria read the letter and smiled slightly. "They're pushing too hard," she said. "When people act like this, they usually have something to hide." David decided to speak to other neighbors. He walked down the street and greeted a few people watering their lawns. Most of them smiled politely but seemed nervous to talk for long. One elderly man named Mr. Allen stopped for a short chat. When David mentioned the HOA letters, Mr. Allen looked around before speaking. "I've lived here for 20 years, he whispered. "They do this to anyone who questions them. They fined a family last year until they moved away. I think they wanted their property for a relative of one of the board members." David's eyes widened. "So they pressure people until they leave?" Mr. Allen nodded. "They call it rule enforcement, but it's control. Be careful." That evening, David told Maria everything. She listened carefully, then pulled out a small notebook. "We'll keep records," she said. "Every letter, every visit, every detail. If they try anything again, we'll have proof." The next few days were quiet. David went to work and Maria stayed home finishing some freelance work on her laptop. Still, she felt the same strange eyes on their house. A car would park on the corner every few hours, and then another would replace it. One afternoon, Maria decided to test something. She took her phone and pretended to take photos of the cars. Within minutes, both cars drove away quickly. That told her everything she needed to know. When David returned home, Maria showed him a list she had written. It included license plate numbers, times, and descriptions of the cars. "If they think they can scare us," she said, "they're mistaken." The next morning, David got another knock at the door. This time it was a man in a suit who introduced himself as Mr. Clark from the HOA board. He smiled politely, holding a clipboard. "Good morning, Mr. David," he said. "We just want to resolve these small issues." "It will be easier if you cooperate," David stayed calm. "I'm happy to follow the rules," he replied, "but only if those rules are written in the community book. Show me where it says my door color or garden decoration breaks a rule." Mr. Clark's smile faded slightly. "The board has the right to make decisions for the good of the community," he said. "That means for everyone's good, not just a few," Maria added as she stepped beside David. Her voice was calm but firm. Mr. Clark looked uncomfortable. "I'll return later," he said quickly, then walked away. After he left, Maria turned to David. "They're getting nervous. They didn't expect us to stand our ground." That evening, Maria went to her desk and opened a small box. Inside, it was a brown leather wallet with her old federal ID card. David looked at it, surprised. "You really think you'll need that?" he asked. Maria nodded slowly. "If they send fake officers again, this will be the end of it." David trusted her completely. The calm confidence in her eyes made him believe that whatever the HOA tried next, they were ready. But deep inside, Maria knew the HOA would not stop easily. They had power, connections, and a reason for wanting the couple gone. She had seen people like this before, and she knew one thing for sure. Truth always wins when you stand firm. The next few days passed with strange silence around David and Maria's house. The HOA didn't send any more letters, and there were no late-night knocks on the door. At first, David thought the trouble might be over, but Maria wasn't convinced. She knew that silence often came before another plan. One morning, while David was watering the front yard, he noticed a group of people standing near the end of the street. They were talking quietly, looking in his direction. When he waved at them, they quickly walked away. Later that day, he saw a white truck stop in front of his house. The driver looked around and then drove off without delivering anything. Maria noticed everything too. She sat by the window making notes in her small notebook. "They're planning something," she said calmly. "They're trying to make us feel uneasy." David sighed. "Why can't they just leave us alone? We're not breaking any rules." "That's not what they care about," Maria said softly. "They want control." Later that week, they received a letter marked urgent. The paper looked more official this time, with a stamp that said Neighborhood Safety Notice. It claimed that the local police would be conducting routine inspections in the area and that residents must cooperate. Maria's eyes narrowed as she read the paper. "This isn't from the police," she said. "Look at the language." "Police don't write letters like this," David frowned. "Then they're trying again." Maria nodded. "They're pretending to involve the police, hoping we'll panic." That evening, as the sun began to set, the sound of car doors closing echoed outside. David peeked through the curtains and saw the same two men who had come earlier wearing fake uniforms. This time they had parked a car with flashing lights, though it didn't look like a real police vehicle. Maria stood beside him. Her expression was calm but firm. "Let them come," she said. A loud knock followed. David opened the door slightly, staying cautious. One of the men said, "We're here for the inspection. We spoke before, remember? The HOA has asked for full cooperation." David replied politely, "Before we continue, please show me your police identification clearly." The man flashed a card again, but Maria stepped forward. "Hold it up," she said. Her voice carried quiet authority. The man hesitated but raised the card. Maria looked closely and then shook her head. "This is not an official ID. And your car isn't a registered police vehicle either." The two men looked at each other, unsure of what to say. Maria then stepped back, opened a drawer near the entrance, and took out her brown leather wallet. She opened it and showed her old federal identification card. The card had her photo, name, and seal clearly visible. Her voice stayed calm. "You've just pretended to be law officers. That's a serious matter. I suggest you leave immediately before real authorities arrive." The men froze for a moment, then turned around quickly and left without saying another word. The fake flashing lights disappeared down the street. David closed the door and turned to his wife with admiration. "I think you scared them for good." Maria smiled faintly. "Maybe for now, but I don't think they'll stop." That night, Maria called a friend she used to work with. She didn't share every detail, but she explained that people pretending to be police had shown up at her house twice. Her friend promised to check if there were any reports of similar activity in the area. The next morning, Maria received a call back. Her friend said that there were no official inspections planned in their neighborhood. The local police had not sent anyone. That confirmed everything they suspected. Maria thanked her friend and hung up. She turned to David. "Now we have proof. They're behind this." David nodded. "So what do we do next?" "We stay calm," Maria said. "And we gather more evidence. The HOA can't hide forever. People like them always make mistakes when they think they have power." Over the next few days, Maria installed a small camera near the front door and another by the garage. David fixed a light that turned on automatically when someone approached the porch. Every night, Maria reviewed the footage carefully. One evening, she caught something interesting. A woman from the HOA board was seen walking up to their mailbox after dark. She took something out and then left quickly. When Maria checked the mailbox the next morning, the latest HOA letter was missing. She smiled. "Now we know who's trying to keep things quiet." David felt proud of her quick thinking. They had moved to the neighborhood hoping for peace, and now they found themselves in the middle of a strange power game. But Maria's calm strength gave him confidence. They didn't know it yet, but the situation was about to reach a turning point, one that would expose the HOA's hidden plans and change everything that followed. The morning after Maria caught the woman on camera, she woke up early and made coffee. David joined her at the kitchen table, and together they watched the video again. The woman was clearly one of the HOA board members, Mrs. Green. She had come late at night, taken a letter from their mailbox, and walked away quickly while looking around. David leaned forward. "She must have removed something important," he said. Maria nodded. "They're afraid of something being recorded. That's why she took the letter." David looked thoughtful. "Maybe they wrote something they shouldn't have, and now they're trying to hide it." Maria smiled slightly. "That's possible. People who do wrong things often try to erase their steps afterward." Later that day, Maria went to the local post office and spoke with a kind worker named Mrs. Turner. She explained that some of their mail was being taken from their box. Mrs. Turner listened carefully and promised to keep a close watch. She even said she could notify the couple if anyone suspicious came near their box again. When Maria returned home, she found David fixing a small wooden sign near the front porch. It said, "You are on camera." He smiled when she saw it. "Maybe this will keep them away," he said. Maria laughed softly. "Or maybe it will make them more nervous." Over the next 2 days, everything seemed calm. There were no new letters, no strangers near the house, and no fake officers. David began to feel hopeful again, but Maria still felt there was more to uncover. On the 3rd day, she decided to attend the next HOA meeting. The invitation had been left in their mailbox a week before, and it said all residents were welcome to attend. David didn't want her to go alone, so he went with her. The meeting was held in a small community hall at the end of the neighborhood. When they entered, everyone turned to look at them. The room was filled with board members sitting behind a long table. Mrs. Green sat in the middle with a tight smile that didn't look friendly. "Welcome," she said in a flat tone. "We didn't expect you to attend." Maria smiled calmly. "We just wanted to understand the rules better. It's always good to stay informed." Mrs. Green exchanged glances with the other board members. "Of course," she said slowly. "We have a few updates today." As the meeting went on, Maria noticed how the board talked about rule changes without asking for any resident's opinion. They made decisions quietly, noting them down as if they were final. When one elderly man asked a question, they brushed him off quickly. After the meeting, Maria walked up to Mrs. Green. "Thank you for the update," she said politely. "I just had one question. Is it true that you can change house rules without letting residents vote?" Mrs. Green's smile faded. "The board has that authority," she replied shortly. Maria nodded, keeping her tone calm. "Interesting. I think we'll check those rules in the county office tomorrow, just to be sure." For a moment, Mrs. Green's face changed. She looked surprised, then tried to smile again. "You don't need to do that," she said. "Everything is already approved." Maria simply replied, "Still, I like to confirm things for peace of mind." When Maria and David left the hall, David asked, "What was that about the county office?" Maria smiled. "Every HOA has to file official papers. If they're making fake rules, the county will have no record of them. Then we'll have proof." The next day, they drove to the county records office. The clerk there helped them find the HOA's registration papers and list of approved rules. As Maria expected, none of the new rules matched what the board had been demanding. "This proves it," David said. "They're making up their own rules." Maria took copies of the documents and carefully placed them in a folder. "Now we have something real," she said. "But we won't confront them yet. Let's see what they do next." That evening, Maria set up another small camera near the back of their house. She had a feeling someone might try to come again. Her instincts were right. Around midnight, the motion light turned on. On the camera feed, a man in a dark hoodie walked near the fence looking around. He seemed to be checking if the cameras were real. Maria woke David quietly. Together, they watched as the man looked at the house and then walked away quickly when the light turned on again. David's face was tense. "They're trying to scare us again." Maria placed a hand on his arm. "Let them try. We're ready this time." She saved the video clip and backed it up on her computer. The HOA didn't know it yet, but every move they made was being recorded. The next morning, Maria made a calm plan. She would report everything, the fake police, the stolen mail, and the false rules, to a trusted contact she still knew from her federal days. She wanted everything handled properly. As she packed the documents, she looked at David with a soft smile. "They think we're just an ordinary couple," she said, "but soon they'll learn how wrong they are." The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains as Maria sat at her desk, organizing every piece of evidence they had collected. There were printed letters, photos from the cameras, and copies of official county records. Each document told a small part of the same story. The HOA was making false rules and using fake authority to control homeowners. David entered the room holding 2 cups of coffee. "You've been working since dawn," he said softly. Maria smiled and took the cup from him. "I like to stay ahead of people who play unfairly." David sat beside her, looking at the papers. What will you do with all this? Maria's eyes stayed focused. I'll send it to a contact who still works in the bureau. They can confirm if anyone connected to this HOA has a record of false activity. Once we have that confirmation, we'll know exactly who we're dealing with. David felt proud of her calm strength. You always think 2 steps ahead, he said with a smile. Maria replied, That's the only way to stay safe when people hide behind fake power. Later that day, David went to work while Maria stayed home. The house was quiet except for the soft sound of her typing. Around noon, she received an email from her old colleague, Mr. Harris. He confirmed that he would look into the HOA's background. His message ended with one short line. You were right to trust your instincts. Maria closed her laptop and took a deep breath. It felt good to know that someone on the inside was helping. That evening when David came home, he brought news. A few neighbors asked me today if we had trouble with the HOA too, he said. They've been getting strange letters as well. Maria listened carefully. So we're not the only ones. No, David said. It seems they've been sending threats to anyone who disagrees with their rules. Maria nodded slowly. Then maybe it's time we stop being quiet. The next morning, Maria printed some of the documents they had collected and placed them in a small folder. She wanted to speak to the other neighbors directly. With David by her side, she knocked on a few doors along the street. The first person they spoke to was Mr. Allen, the elderly man who had warned them earlier. When Maria showed him the copies of the county records, his eyes widened. I knew it, he said. They've been doing this for years, but no one ever had proof. They visited 2 more houses, and each time the reaction was the same. People were surprised, angry, and relieved that someone was finally standing up to the HOA. By the end of the day, Maria and David had a small group of neighbors willing to help. They agreed to meet that evening in David's living room to discuss what to do next. At 7 o'clock, 5 neighbors arrived. The mood was serious but hopeful. Maria placed the documents on the table and explained everything, the fake officers, the stolen mail, and the false rules. She spoke calmly, choosing her words carefully. When she finished, there was silence for a moment. Then one woman named Linda said, We should all report them together. If we stand as one, they can't target just one family. Everyone agreed. David nodded. We'll prepare a written report with all our names on it. That way, the authorities will have no choice but to investigate. Maria smiled at the group. This is how change begins. Not with fear, but with unity. After the meeting, Maria received another message from Mr. Harris. It contained a short summary of what he had found. 2 of the HOA board members had been involved in a past company that was fined for fraud. The company had closed, and soon after, the same people had started this HOA. Maria showed the message to David. Now it all makes sense, she said. They're using the HOA as a front to collect money and control property. David shook his head in disbelief. How can people do something like this in a neighborhood meant for peace? Maria's voice was calm but firm. Because they think no one will question them. But they're wrong this time. The next morning, Maria called the HOA office and asked to meet with the board. She spoke politely but clearly. I have something important to discuss regarding your recent actions, she said. Mrs. Green agreed to meet that evening at the community hall. Maria didn't show any sign of worry, but David could see the quiet determination in her eyes. When evening came, they arrived at the hall carrying a folder full of evidence. The board members were already seated, their faces serious. Mrs. Green greeted them with her usual forced smile. Maria looked around the table and spoke calmly. We know what you've been doing. You've sent false letters, made up rules, and used people pretending to be officers to frighten residents. That ends now. The room grew silent. Mrs. Green tried to interrupt, but Maria continued. We have video proof, written records, and official documents from the county. You've broken several laws. Mrs. Green's face turned pale. She didn't expect Maria to speak so directly. Maria placed her folder on the table and looked at her with steady eyes. This community deserves honesty and fairness. You can either make things right or face the consequences. Mrs. Green didn't reply. The silence in the room said everything. As David and Maria walked out of the hall, David asked, Do you think they'll stop now? Maria looked up at the clear night sky and said softly, Not yet. But the truth has already started to catch up with them. The next morning was calm but heavy with questions. Ravi and Mira sat at their kitchen table, sipping tea while the sound of birds outside filled the silence. Both of them had hardly slept, their minds circling around the strange events that had happened. The fake police officers, the suspicious HOA members, and the lies that surrounded their neighborhood were all beginning to form a clearer picture, but one that neither of them liked. Mira opened her laptop again, scanning through the documents she had copied from the HOA's internal network. She had gone through half of them last night, but had decided to rest before continuing. Now in the bright morning light, she noticed something she had missed before, a file labeled Project Renewal. Ravi leaned closer and asked what it was. Mira clicked the file and a long report appeared. It contained maps, property details, and secret communication between certain HOA members and a private company. The company was planning to buy several homes in the area to build luxury apartments. The HOA was helping them by forcing homeowners to leave through high fines, fake violations, and pressure. Ravi was stunned. So that was why the HOA wanted them gone. Their home was standing on the part of land that the company wanted most. Mira's eyes narrowed as she read more. It wasn't just about money. It was also about power. Some members of the HOA were receiving secret payments from the company in return for helping with the plan. Mira printed a few pages and laid them on the table. "This is proof," she said calmly. "They tried to scare us away because we refused to sell." Ravi nodded but felt a chill run through him. "If they went this far to send fake cops," he said, "they might do something else now that you found this." Mira gave a small smile. "Let them try," she said. "Now we have the truth." Later that day, Mira called a trusted contact at the local police department. She explained everything carefully and sent the documents. Her contact promised to start an investigation quietly. Mira also informed the real HOA office at the city level about the situation in their local branch. It was risky, but she knew she had to expose what was happening. That evening, Ravi went out for a walk to clear his mind. Some neighbors waved at him, but others looked away quickly, pretending not to see him. The atmosphere in the community felt different now, tense and quiet. He realized many people might have known something but were too afraid to speak up. As he walked past the park, he saw Mr. Harris, the HOA president, talking to another member in a low voice. When they noticed Ravi, they quickly ended their conversation and walked away. Ravi returned home and told Mira what he saw. She wasn't surprised. "They probably know we found something," she said. "But we have already shared it with the police. Now we just wait." A few days later, a city inspector arrived in their neighborhood. He went door to door asking questions about the HOA's actions. Some residents started talking about the high fines and strange letters they had received. Slowly, the truth began to spread. The HOA members who had acted unfairly started to panic, trying to hide their connection to the private company. Mira continued to collect small details and sent regular updates to her contact. One night, she found another hidden file showing payment transfers to a few HOA members' personal accounts. That was the final piece of proof needed. She looked at Ravi and said softly, "It's almost over." But Ravi felt uneasy. Things were moving fast, and he knew the people behind all this would not give up easily. Still, he trusted Mira's calm confidence. She had handled every situation with patience and intelligence. That night, as they sat together on the porch, a gentle wind moved through the trees. Ravi looked up at the stars and said, "You know, maybe this was supposed to happen. Maybe we were meant to uncover this." Mira smiled slightly. "Sometimes life brings us to the right place at the right time," she said. The next morning, a police car arrived, this time a real one. An officer came to their door and informed them that several HOA members were being questioned. The fake officers who had come earlier were also identified as hired actors. Mira thanked the officer, feeling a deep sense of relief. The truth was finally coming out and justice was on its way. The sun was bright the next morning, but the air around the neighborhood felt different. People who once stayed quiet now gathered outside in small groups, whispering and talking about the sudden visit from the real police the day before. News had spread quickly that some HOA members were being questioned. Many residents looked surprised, some even relieved. Inside their house, Ravi and Mira sat together, feeling a strange mix of calm and tension. For days, they had been trying to protect themselves from lies and pressure, and now the truth was finally opening up. Still, Mira knew it wasn't over. She had seen enough cases in her career to understand that powerful people often tried to cover their tracks when caught. Ravi checked his phone and noticed a message from an unknown number. It read, "Stop pushing this matter or you'll regret it." His heart skipped a beat, and he showed it to Mira. She took the phone, saved the message, and forwarded it to her police contact without saying much. Her face stayed calm, but her eyes were sharp. "This means they're nervous," she said softly. "They're afraid of what we found." Later in the day, an officer named Daniel came by to update them. He told them that the police had arrested one of the fake officers from the earlier incident. During questioning, the man admitted that he was hired by a community leader to scare a homeowner into leaving. He had been told to act like a real officer but never to harm anyone, only to frighten them. Ravi felt uneasy hearing that. Even though no one had been hurt, the idea of someone pretending to be a cop still troubled him deeply. Mira thanked Officer Daniel for the update. She then asked if the police had connected the act to anyone specific in the HOA. Daniel nodded slightly. "We have leads," he said. "It looks like your HOA president and a few others are involved, but we're still collecting proof." He added that the private company was now also under review. When Daniel left, Mira looked at Ravi and said, "It's starting to fall apart for them." Ravi smiled faintly. "Finally," he said. "They made us feel small, but now they'll have to answer." In the following days, something interesting began to happen in the neighborhood. People who had once avoided Ravi now came to talk to him. One elderly couple told him they had been fined for having garden flowers that didn't match the community color. Another man shared that his mailbox was painted the wrong shade of gray and he was charged a large fee for it. Ravi listened patiently to each story, realizing that many others had also suffered unfair treatment. Mira decided to organize a small neighborhood meeting in their backyard. She invited everyone to come and share their experiences. To her surprise, almost the whole street showed up. The mood was mixed with anger and hope. People wanted change. Some even apologized to Ravi and Mira for believing the HOA's false stories about them earlier. At the meeting, Mira spoke clearly and kindly. "The HOA was meant to help us, not control us," she said. "We all deserve fairness. The only way we can fix this is by standing together." Her words touched many hearts. For the first time, the neighbors saw her not as a quiet woman who stayed out of trouble, but as someone strong and wise. By the end of the evening, the community had formed a plan. They decided to write a joint complaint to the city housing department. Everyone signed it, showing unity. Ravi felt proud as he watched people who once stayed silent now standing tall. That night, as the house grew quiet, Ravi sat near the window looking outside. The streetlights glowed softly and the sound of crickets filled the air. Mira joined him with a cup of tea and said, "It's not just about us anymore. It's about everyone who was treated wrongly." Ravi nodded. "You're right. And this time we'll make sure it never happens again." Just then, Mira's phone buzzed. It was an email from her police contact. The subject line read, "Important update." She opened it quickly. The message said that the city investigation had confirmed the HOA's illegal partnership with the private company. Arrests would begin soon, and the entire board was likely to be replaced. Mira smiled with quiet satisfaction. "It's happening," she said. Ravi's face lit up. "You mean it's really over?" She nodded, almost. "Tomorrow will be the real turning point." That night, they slept peacefully for the first time in a long while. The fear that had once filled their home was gone, replaced by calm and strength. The people who had tried to break them were now facing the truth. As dawn approached, the neighborhood rested under a soft golden sky. Change was coming, and it was no longer just Mira and Ravi's fight. It had become a story of an entire community learning to stand up for what was right. And together, they were ready to take back their peace. Morning sunlight filled the neighborhood with a new kind of brightness. Birds sang on the rooftops, and the air felt lighter than it had in weeks. For the first time, the people living there were smiling again. The dark cloud of fear that had hung over everyone was finally lifting. Ravi and Mira stood on their porch, sipping tea and watching the peaceful street. Ravi said quietly, "It feels different today." Mira nodded and replied, "Yes, this is what peace should feel like." Around mid-morning, a few police cars drove slowly into the neighborhood. Real officers stepped out, calm and professional. Curious neighbors peeked through their windows and gathered in small groups to watch. Ravi and Mira stood silently as the officers walked toward the HOA office at the corner of the street. The main members of the HOA, including Mr. Harris, were called outside. None of them spoke. They all looked nervous. Officer Daniel, the same officer who had helped Mira earlier, greeted Ravi and Mira with a respectful nod before turning toward the HOA members. He handed them official papers and said, "You are being taken for questioning regarding fraud and misuse of community funds." There was no shouting or arguing. Everything happened calmly. The HOA members were escorted into the police cars, and the cars drove away slowly. As the sound of the engines faded, the crowd began to talk in low voices. For many, it was a moment of surprise. The people who had once acted powerful were now the ones being questioned. A neighbor whispered, "I never thought this day would come." Another said softly, "It's about time someone stood up." Ravi felt a wave of relief wash over him. Mira smiled, not with pride but with quiet satisfaction. She knew that justice didn't always come quickly, but when it did, it restored balance. The people who had used fear and lies to control others were finally being held responsible. Later that afternoon, the city housing department arrived to hold a public meeting. Everyone from the community was invited. Chairs were set up in the park and people gathered under the trees. The city representative, a kind woman named Ms. Patel, spoke to the crowd. "We have completed our investigation," she said. "The former HOA board has been suspended. A new committee will be formed fairly with honest members from this neighborhood." The crowd applauded. Ravi looked around and saw real happiness on people's faces. Some neighbors had tears in their eyes. It was not just about the arrest or the investigation. It was about getting back their trust, their freedom, and their peace. After the meeting, Ms. Patel personally thanked Mira for her help. "Your courage and information made this possible," she said. "Most people would have walked away, but you chose to do what was right." Mira replied kindly, "I only wanted fairness. No one should be afraid in their own home." Ravi felt proud as he stood beside his wife. He realized that their quiet strength had inspired others. People who once avoided them were now smiling and coming forward to talk. Children played in the park again. Families started repainting their homes, planting flowers, and rebuilding what fear had taken from them. That evening, as the sun set behind the houses, the sky turned orange and gold. Ravi and Mira sat together in their backyard. The air smelled of fresh grass and soft laughter from nearby homes filled the air. Ravi said, "I think this place finally feels like a real community." Mira smiled gently. "Because people chose to stand together," she said. "That's how real change begins." A few days later, new letters arrived at every home. They were from the city, inviting residents to vote for a new HOA committee. This time, every name on the list was chosen by the people, not by power or money. Ravi and Mira decided not to run for any position, but they offered to help the new members understand the rules. They wanted to guide, not control. When the new committee was formed, the neighborhood held a small celebration. There was food, music, and laughter. Children ran around with balloons while adults shared stories of what had happened. The pain and fear had turned into lessons, and those lessons had brought everyone closer. As night came, Ravi looked up at the stars. "We could have moved away," he said softly, "but staying was the right choice." Mira nodded. "Sometimes you don't win by escaping. You win by standing firm." Their journey had started with fear, but it ended with courage and truth. The fake police, the unfair HOA, the lies, all of it had led to this moment of peace. Mira's calm mind and Ravi's patience had protected them when everything seemed against them. Now their home stood as a symbol of honesty in a place that once felt broken. The neighbors respected them not just for what they did, but for how they did it, with dignity and kindness. As they turned off the lights and walked back inside, Ravi said with a smile, "We didn't just save our home. We helped everyone save theirs too." Mira looked at him and replied,